We're delighted to announce that tonight's show is brought to you by Fantasy Serie A. Head to fantasyserie.com and use an in-game budget to build your ultimate team of Italian football stars in one of the most popular fantasy football games online. You can take on friends, fellow Laziali or other Calcio fans from your country in a selection of leagues throughout the season.
Simone Inzaghi in the press conference on Saturday said, Lazio, we need the 3 points. I don't care if we play great football, we need to win. Genoa, it's a new beginning for Lazio. And we have to say, Alistair McKenzie, that Lazio played not only a great football, but finally start scoring and start taking the chances they had and put it in the net. So this is a big difference, I'm asking you, compared to the last performance of Lazio that played well but didn't get the points.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that message from Inzaghi clearly came through loud and clear to the players, and he was right. It was actually really refreshing to hear him say that. Inzaghi, it kind of goes against the way that he often talks in these press conferences in the media, to be so brutally honest about the fact that the results come first. But he was absolutely right, especially after the kind of couple of weeks they've had, the criticism he's come in for and his team's come in for. But that was, that was an absolutely devastating performance from Lazio. 4 goals, like you say. I think the clinical edge was a really positive thing, and obviously that wasn't just from one player having a great game. 4 different goal scorers. Would have been 5 if Alberto's goal had been allowed as well. It was a terrific response to a period of difficulty, and very very happy about it.
Yeah, we have to say that Lazio got the Luis Alberto goal disallowed. It was an amazing chance created by Lazio. I have to say, Alistair, that it looked like it was a foul. So the ref made the right decision there. I just wonder why they didn't use the VR when there were 2 clear penalty for Lazio, one in the first half, one in the second half. Even Sky commentator said, wow, that looks clearly a penalty. But we're going to talk about the referee later, probably. I have a question from you, Alistair. Were you more surprised by seeing Radu scoring, seeing Caicedo scoring, or Pandev not scoring against Lazio?
Radu has to be the biggest surprise of all. I mean, it was actually really funny to see that response from him himself, because when he scored, he didn't really know what to do. He didn't really know how to celebrate because he's obviously not very used to it. But then also, after, because he ran kind of back towards the Curva Nord, and by the time his teammates caught up with him, half of them kind of had their hands on their heads in disbelief that it just happened. It's quite funny. Obviously, he's got a reputation as being someone who doesn't often find the net. But the thing is, when he does score, they do tend to be quite good goals. And that was an excellent strike. And it kind of makes you wonder why it doesn't happen a bit more often if he can hit a ball that way. So yeah, for me that has to be the biggest surprise of the day. I think it's a bit unfair to say is it a surprise to see Caicedo score, because he's not had an awful lot of time on the pitch so far this season, and I think he's played really well when he has. So I was actually really happy to see him get a goal, because performance he put in against Inter and then again today off the bench have been really encouraging. It's good to see him picking up where he left off from last season, and I think he deserved to open his account for the season.
It was first goal in Serie A this year, so, usually you expect from a striker to score more goals when at the end of September. But anyway, it was, I think, overall very good performance from Lazio. And Alistair, I think that when Luis Alberto and Milinkovic Savic plays so well, Lazio can become a very dangerous team. Now I know a lot of Lazio fans that love to criticize the team will say, hey, we won against Genoa. Genoa is a terrible team, blah, blah, blah. But, I think Lazio played great football, and probably Lazio would have won against any team today playing like that.
Yeah, and Milinkovic Savic is the one that I would pick up on first. I mean, that was the kind of dominant performance from him that we've not seen for a while. I think this season he's started a lot better than he did last year. Obviously, I think he's really benefited from having that full pre-season of conditioning, of getting match sharpness. And he's had a good start to the season, I would say, but this game was his best yet. I think he absolutely dominated in that midfield, not only in the an attacking sense and what he offered there with scoring the opening goal, obviously getting the assist for Caicedo's goal, but I think he created numerous chances. He also made a lot of good tackles, and I think I kind of mentioned that while I was live tweeting during the game, that the goal he scored was started off from him winning the ball back inside the opposition half. And that's something that I've kind of spotted him doing a fair few times this season. And I think he's got a lot better at that, because it's something he's always tried to do, winning the ball back high up. But he's been quite clumsy with that in the past, has been my impression anyway. And given away a few too many fouls to kind of relieve pressure on the other team. Whereas if you can make a clean tackle in those areas, then you really are putting pressure on those teams. So I think he absolutely monstered that game today. He was brilliant. But there were a lot of good performances, a lot of good individual performances, and that's what's so encouraging from this. Like I said at the start, it's not like one player has single-handedly dismantled that Genoa team today. I think a lot of players came out of that game with big credit. Thomas Strakosha made some exceptional saves. Yes, questions will be asked again about his distribution, his kicking, but he made some incredible saves to get that clean sheet. Luis Felipe, we need to talk about. He was very good. Obviously got a lot of attention for that final goal, but another good performance from him. And then Alberto, Immobile, and Caicedo and Milinkovic were all excellent as well. So, yeah, I think it was really encouraging that on an individual basis we can pick out so many different players for praise from today's performance. And I think, to be honest, Inzaghi has to take a lot of credit for that as well, but he's obviously got them in the right frame of mind for this game.
We have to talk about Strakosha because a lot of our followers criticize him in the last matches of Lazio, blame him for the defeat against Cluj and so on. And today was 100 matches in Serie A for Strakosha, which is not unbelievable, but a great achievement considering he's only 24 years old. I thought he was astonishing. He made a save in the first half after Lazio scored. That was unbelievable and probably changed the match, because if Genoa scores immediately, it's a completely other match. So I think after all the critics he received, not only from us but especially from Lazio fan in Rome, I think the performance he had was amazing. Luis Felipe, we said it often. If he's not injured, he really can become a very interesting defender. And this year we finally see him playing much more, because he played Wednesday, he played today when rumors were that Patrick should have started today, and he showed his talent today, because not only he defended well, but the goal of Ciro Immobile comes from an unbelievable thing that Ramos does. He dribbled past pretty much all Genova players from our penalty box to there. That was unbelievable to see.
Yeah, I mean, it's moments like that you can see the kind of Brazilian blood, can't you? It was terrific. I mean, he can obviously. I do wonder how encouraged he would have been to try something like that if the score wasn't already 3-0 with 10 minutes left. To try and go on a mazy run through the midfield. But look, he's clearly got the technical ability to produce something like that. Inzaghi has talked time and again about the fact that he wants his defenders in that back three to be able to not only defend well but contribute to the construction of these attacks, and he's one of the best in the team at doing that. And if he can stay fit, which is the big if, he could be in for finally the kind of breakthrough season we've been waiting for him to have for a year or so now. I kind of expected in a way that could have been last season if it wasn't for all those injury problems. But yeah, he's started the season really promisingly. He's got that technical ability, but he is a very good defender as well. And yeah, what more can we say about him? Really, it's going to take Dennis Vavro. Once he gets up to speed, it's going to take him a big effort to actually knock Felipe out of the team at this rate.
Do you think today it was the reply to Bastos? After scoring in Europe League today, Radu score, Ramos does that unbelievable assist. Is it the answer?
It's no competition, Vittorio. We know this.
For you, but for the rest, and maybe for Simone Inzaghi, I can see Luis Felipe playing trequartista next match.
Just flip the team around. Why not? Put Caicedo at centre back. See what happens.
Could be an option, honestly. Marusic again played, and a friend of mine wrote, with Marusic, Lazio wins all the time.
Well,
fact.
I don't think that is a fact if we look that far back. But this season, yes, because he's played 2 games and we won them both. And he played very well against Parma last weekend. Obviously scored a goal, got a lot of attention for that. This week, not so much. I don't think he was nearly as influential, or he wasn't massively influential last week, but he did make a difference in key moments. Whereas this week, he had that one good chance in the first half when Milinkovic Savic set him up. But other than that, yeah, I mean, he didn't really offer an awful lot, I didn't think. It was quite funny, we've talked before about the fact that whenever we lose, we get about 20 times more comments to our show than we do if we ever win a game, which has been made true again today because we've had very few. And the first thing that came through, after winning a game 4-0 at home, the first comment we get is, "Do you remember Marusic making one dangerous cross in 90 minutes? Also, Lulic looked destroyed after 70 minutes." That was from Benham Haidar Shahi. I hope I've said that right. So yeah, I mean, clearly winning a game 4-0 isn't going to be enough for people to leave Marusic alone. But I mean, he does raise, I should say, a valid point, because I don't remember Marusic making a dangerous cross during that game, and I don't think he had a particularly good game. But I think there are positive things maybe to focus on before that.
Yeah, Alistair, the point for me is that Lazio is a team that try to go too often centrally, especially when Milinkovic Savic and Luis Alberto play that well. They tend to keep the ball and play in a central position instead of opening to the sides to Lulic, or Marusic, or Lazzari, etc. And to be honest, it's not that Marusic didn't do a dangerous cross. I think he never had a chance because Lazio was attacking all match long centrally with Luis Alberto and Milinkovic Savic picking Immobile, Correa, and then Caicedo when he came in. So it's different, and I think this can be a problem like it was last year, because if Luis Alberto and Milinkovic Savic doesn't play that well, then Lazio can be stopped easily because the other team simply put all the players in a central position because they know that Lazio won't go on the sides, and then it gets complicated for the team to create chances. I don't think it was because Marusic didn't play well. He didn't have the chances. So yeah, I think it's a different point of view.
Yeah, I mean, the Lulic fitness question has come up quite often as well. What did you think of that today? Did you think he, again, looked like he was struggling?
I didn't notice, honestly, because, the match was over at that point. But Strakosha in the interview post-match said it was really, really hot today. So, that's a fact that we have to consider. It's not England where it's 10 degrees. In Rome, it's still very hot. So
Well, It wasn't that bad.
But probably still hot on the pitch, and it can make a difference at this point. Said this, we have to make a decision. Or we say that Lulic is not fit to play 90 minutes, and then we ask Inzaghi to play Johnny. Or we say, Lulic is the right decision, and Johnny is not ready, because it cannot be both. We cannot complain when Johnny plays against Inter. Why doesn't Lulic play? And then when Lulic plays, says he's done. He cannot play anymore.
Yeah, I think that. It's not a coincidence that Inzaghi's rotating so much so early. I can't remember who it was. I think it was Cafal, our friend Cafal from Lazio Lounge, on Twitter, make the point that Lazio have had a problem over the last couple of years of fading towards the end of the season, which is obviously linked to your legs running out of batteries, I suppose, by that point. And people complained at that point about the fact that the team, some certain players have been overplayed during the course of the season. So then you can't complain at this stage if Inzaghi does decide to rotate the team to try and stop that from happening again. Which was an interesting point, and I have to apologise if that wasn't Cavall who made that point, and if I've kind of butchered it in the translation. But anyway, I think that with Lulic, the thing that strikes me the most is that he just does need to be used kind of sparingly this season. Not sparingly, but I think they need to track him a bit more carefully than usual. I don't think he is in the shape he has been in the past. And it's so important, especially in that position, given the ground that you're expected to cover in both phases during the 90 minutes, that if you are going to have 90 minutes, you need to be able to make that. And that's something Lazzari has above everyone else, is his fitness is extraordinary. I mean, he's the fittest guy in that team, more or less, by all accounts.
Yeah, so, Alistair, you made a valid point, and I will add to that since Simone Inzaghi has been the manager of this team, every year, in the second half of the season, Lazio start dropping points. Even the first year, if you remember, Lazio, at the end of the season, were starting to lose matches. The second year, when Lazio was fighting for the Champions League, we remember from April onwards, Lazio was knackered and lost the Champions League like that. Third year was pretty much the same. We said that after Lazio losing against Atalanta, they give up in the league. But we have to be honest and say that, again, for the third year in a row with Inzaghi, at the end of the season, the last couple of months, Lazio wasn't playing as usual and was dropping a lot of points. So I think that Inzaghi came and talked with the staff, even with the physical trainers, and said probably the numbers was showing that, and so they decide to start doing the turnover earlier. And then we have to be honest and say, Inter, let's take Inter for example, against Sampdoria. They did a lot of turnover. Juventus is doing it, even with Sarri, that we know it's one of the managers who does less turnover ever. So I think that maybe, learning from their mistakes, Inzaghi started doing this from the beginning of the season, because they know that otherwise we will arrive in May when players have nothing left to give. And, this year is going to be different, and we're going to see if things are going to work, if Inzaghi is going to prove everybody that he's right.
Yeah, and I think with this Lazio team particularly, there is a very strong starting 11, and as soon as you put quite a few of the rotation options into that team, the quality immediately drops from being that of a Champions League team to a Europa League team, you'd say, from Milinkovic Savic to Marco Parolo, or whether that's from Immobile to Caicedo or whatever it is. But I think in order to then make the most of that squad, you need to make sure that those players are at their best. And so by giving so much game time to the likes of Bastos, Parolo, Caicedo early on in the season, I think that they will be used. They're still not in my mind first choice. Although, actually, that is something I suppose I want to bring up because Caicedo, after his performance against Inter and then again today off the bench, when I was coming home tonight, I heard on the radio one of the Lazio talk shows were discussing Caicedo and saying that he's now he now should be considered first choice ahead of Correa because of Correa's performances in the last 2 games versus Caicedo's. So what do you make of that? Would you say that he's now ahead of Correa in the pecking order?
Well, to add to this, Simone Inzaghi said that he considered Parolo, Caicedo, Marusic as starters. So that's why they're playing a lot, because he thinks Lazio hasn't got 11 starters. There is Caicedo, there is Parolo, there is Marusic. And so Inzaghi thinks that this rotation is because all these other players deserve to play like the others. And as you know, I was skeptical to see Caicedo start against Inter. But after the match, we have to say that Inzaghi made the right decision, and Caicedo played really, really well against a big team, one of the best teams in Italy at the moment. And so it makes sense to say that Caicedo deserves to play more. He can be considered a starter. Now, my big question, and this is something we are going on, we started 2 years ago. I don't think he's a number 9, but he can play in the Correa position. So, especially if Correa, it's true that he has a little injury, then yeah, I would start Caicedo. But the big news, the big difference, Alistair, is that Inzaghi is considering all these players like starting players, and so that's why he's rotating that much. Now, I would agree with Marco Parolo, considering in basketball you say that he's the 6th player because you play 5 and then there's someone that comes in very often, especially if Leva plays like that. Caicedo, he can be a very good player there in front, especially because we don't have that many alternatives. We saw Adekanya making his debut today in Serie A. So yeah, big teams should have 4 or 5 players that are at the same level of the starters. Now, do you think they are at the same level? Well, Parolo probably yes. I'm really curious to see Berisha. Marusic have proved to make a step forward, and maybe, we said about that, competition, challenging everybody makes you train harder, makes you play harder, and maybe we're seeing the results now. I don't know, do you think Caicedo a starter? That's the question.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why not. I think Caicedo has really shown his intelligence in the last over the last year, because he's been able to listen to the advice he's been given and change the way he plays in order to not only be more useful to the team, but in order to actually offer something to the team which no one else there can. So actually, when it comes to, talking about whether he's a Vice Immobile, whether he plays in a Correa role, I don't think that really matters, or that's even the question here. I think it's that by playing Caicedo up there, you've got someone who does a job which no one else in this squad does. So by putting him on, you have someone who takes care of the ball, who's incredibly unselfish, who will fight to win those long balls, to relieve pressure on the defence, who's going to win you fouls in those areas. He's a very clever player, and I think my biggest criticism almost would be that he's too unselfish at times. Often his first touch, he plays really quick one-touch passes, but often his first thought is that when he gets a ball into feet in a dangerous area, he plays it back out of the box to a teammate rather than, say, instinctively trying to get a shot away or something like that. But I think essentially, I think he's a starter because in certain games you want a player like that, and that's why he started that game against Inter. Was Inzaghi pointed out afterwards, they have a very physical 3-man defence that Lazio were having to come up against, and to deal with that, putting Caicedo in there was the right choice, because he's the guy who's going to occupy those defenders, who's going to give them a hard game, much more so than Immobile or Correa would. And those guys can kind of play off him, you know. So I think he's just a totally different option, and that's been really encouraging to see that development in the last year or so, because it's the conversation in my mind anyway has moved away from him being a Vice Immobile to just him being his own thing. He's Caicedo, and he does a job that no one else in that team does.
But the problem, and we saw it in the past week, is without Ciro Immobile, this team struggled to score. Today was completely different, and this is the Lazio we need to see, because let's not remember that 2 years ago Ciro Immobile was top scorer of Serie A, but as well we had your friend Bastos scoring 5 goals, if I'm not wrong. We had Luis Alberto scoring, Milinkovic Savic scoring, Parolo scoring.
De Vrij as well.
I didn't want to mention him, but okay. So, you know, if you want to win, if you want to fight for the Champions League, you cannot rely only on Ciro Immobile. So we need to have different players scoring, and today was the perfect example. And the other thing, Alistair, about today was Ciro Immobile turned himself to be an assist man, especially in the first half. Instead of going for it, he made some couple of very good assists, especially the one that was disallowed for Luis Alberto. I thought we saw a very generous Ciro Immobile today.
Yeah, and he has been. I mean, another one of the comments we got today from another one of our former guests, Michael Damasio, and he said, whatever was said to Ciro this week seems to have worked. He's been great today, spreading the ball around and playing unselfish football. Bravo. And I think he's absolutely right, but I think that's not really new this season. He's been playing that way the whole season, in being unselfish, in setting up teammates. I mentioned that about after the Rome derby, the way that he set up that goal. He had the opportunity to try and get a shot away himself, but he had the intelligence to pick out Alberto for that goal. I remember writing a piece after the Parma game last week talking about how Immobile and Alberto have been at the centre of absolutely everything Lazio have done this season, essentially. After that game, I think it was 8 goals we've scored, and 6 of them have involved either Immobile or Alberto. And then after today, well, obviously we're now on 12 goals, but Immobile and Alberto had their hand in a fair few of those as well. So it's not just that he's putting it in the back of the net. Obviously, I think that's number 4 now today for Immobile. But yeah, he's helping construct those attacks. He's building those attacks, and he is a hard worker. You know, that's the side of his game that he doesn't get enough credit for. So yeah, I think if you've got a striker who's doing both of those things for you, who's helping construct the attacks, who's looking for those killer passes, he would have had an assist for Alberto if it hadn't been disallowed. If you've got someone who can do that, be a creator and a finisher at the same time, then you've got the full package, really. And I think all too often people think of Ciro Immobile just as a finisher, when that's just not true.
No, he's a very generous striker, and you could see it today, and I think it's really important for this team, especially because he can create space for the others, like Milinkovic Savic, as we saw today. So I think it was a very encouraging performance today, Alistair McKenzie, but I really appreciate what Acerbi said after the match. He said, we showed everybody that we can play football, good football, but this must be just the beginning. We cannot win today, think that we are great, and then Thursday lose again Rennes, and then restart again next Sunday and winning again. We have to win matches in a row to prove everybody that we are this level, and otherwise it won't make a difference. It won't make nothing if we win today, then we lose Thursday and then back on. Especially because he said Thursday is a very important match for us. We have to win at home against Rennes after the defeat against Cluj, and to gain confidence, to prove everybody that we are a good team, and to fight for the Champions League is not just a victory against Genoa that will make it. We have to now start and winning matches in a row. Obviously, winning today give us confidence, but we have to start putting in a series of victory. And so he said we have to be very calm, relaxed. Don't think that we've done anything special. We won today, but now we have to try to win a series of matches. I didn't think Acerbi played very well today, and same thing in this year. He's not the same Acerbi, but I think what he says is very important, and I hope that the team believes him and trusts him when he says these things.
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, comments like those are that signals to me that he is a real leader, because you need those leaders to be pragmatic, to be realistic, and he's right, because we've been here before. This isn't this isn't really new that Lazio can blow away teams, and we beat Genoa 4-1 last season. The same with Parma, the two teams we've beaten over the last 2 weekends. So it's not like getting big wins against minor teams is necessarily a novelty for us. But yeah, he's absolutely right, because if Lazio follow this up with a really pathetic, lifeless performance against Rennes on Thursday, then it's all for nothing, essentially. Because even though it's a different competition, people are looking for consistency here, and it's that consistency which has set good teams apart from great teams. And I think Serie A always has to be, like we've said already, the priority this season, and that game against Bologna is a big one next week, because they've had a good start to the season, even though they got a bad result today. So, yeah, a lot can change in a week, as they know, because we've just come off a pretty tough little period there. But if they follow that Genoa result up with a win against Rennes and a win against Bologna, you're suddenly going into that international break on a real high, a real buzz. And yeah, so essentially very encouraged to hear him say that. And I think, like I mentioned at the start with Inzaghi, I think the right messages are getting across recently. That was something that I was very critical of around the Spal game, the Cluj game, that I didn't think the right messages were coming out from Inzaghi after that. I didn't think he was taking enough responsibility for the issues that obviously exist. Whereas now, the message seems to have changed. The message seems to be more, we can play nice football, that's all well and good, but that's not what matters here. And I think in order for us to actually grow as a team and do something serious this season, that has to be the way that they think.
Even because, Alistair, if we go and see the table, we have to admit that Lazio won, but Atalanta won, Roma won, Napoli won. So, we are still 3 points behind Atalanta. We are 1 point behind Roma. So it was important, it was fundamental to win, because if you didn't win today, the gap would have become wider. And yes, it's still September, it's still early, but if you have to recover 6 points, it's become complicated. You start to feel the pressure. So it was really important to win, but unfortunately we're still not there. So Lazio have to try to focus, because the gap with Atalanta is 3 points. And we all said, and everybody keeps saying, Atalanta this year won't make it. They have the Champions League. They cannot perform again like last year. Last year was a surprise, blah, blah, blah. We said exactly the same thing last year, and they reached a Champions League. Now this year, again, we're saying the same thing, and Atalanta is still there, ahead of us in the Champions League position. And we have to be honest, they deserve to be there at the moment. So
they're so annoying. So good.
Lazio absolutely deserved to win. They had to win, but we didn't do nothing. And that's the message. We didn't do nothing because we are not in the Champions League position now. We still are behind Roma and Atalanta that are going to be the team we're going to fight for the Champions League. And still, tonight there is Fiorentina-Milan. So, depending on this match, we're going to see if we are fighting with the other teams for this position. So absolutely, Lazio players don't have to think, okay, this victory is everything. No. As you said, we have to arrive at the break with possibly other 2 match won. Against Rennes is fundamental, and Acerbi said it, if we want to get to the Europe League, it's already a playoff. If we lose against Rennes, if we don't win against Rennes, we are pretty much out. So Lazio have to win there. And as you were saying, against Bologna, again, it's a must-win match again because we are behind and we have to recover and we have to put a couple of wins one after the other. And so, yes, we played well today. Milinkovic Savic is back, maybe. Luis Alberto played well, etc., etc. Today we celebrate. Tomorrow the players have to concentrate on the next match because big team does like that. And if you want to really fight for the Champions League, it is not just winning against Genoa. You have to be consistent.
Yeah, and speaking of which, I mean, I don't know how far ahead we've been looking here, but that run of fixtures after the international break could be, quite decisive, really, because we've got Atalanta, Fiorentina, Torino, Milan. That's 4 games in a row against teams that are, obviously quite differing states of repair at the moment, but all teams that are capable, I'd say, of challenging for European football this season. And that's a run of fixtures that really can define your season. So we need to be all guns blazing for that. And actually, worth mentioning that at the same time as those games are going on, we've got the home and away legs against Celtic, which won't be easy either. So I hope they get the results that they need before this international break, because we're really going to need that buzz, that momentum going into these fixtures afterwards, by the looks of things.
Yeah, very, very important matches. And can I say I'm happy that Correa hasn't been called with the Argentinian national team, because this will mean that he'll have time to rest. Today, I'm not sure he was 100% fit. And I think we need Correa to be back as his best if we want to fight for the Champions League. Especially, as you were saying, we have a lot of tough fixture coming on, and obviously we will need to rotate players there in front. I don't think Adekanye is ready to play in these tough matches, so we need Caicedo, Immobile and Correa at the maximum and in great condition. So not having Correa playing with the national team, it would be really important for us. But now let's not go too ahead, because Thursday there is Rennes that I think drew this weekend, but it's still a complicated match that Lazio, after the defeat against Glucci, has to win if they want to fight for the Europa League. And let's not forget that, yes, you get through even if you arrive second, but it's really fundamental to arrive first to avoid to have a big challenge immediately afterwards, to have to fight directly against a big team after the group phase. That is something we have to avoid. Let's not forget what happened last year. So if Inzaghi wants to go deep in the Europa League, we have to try to arrive top of the group. I don't think it's impossible, but after what happened against Cluj, we definitely have to win next Thursday. So Lazio has to focus for that match. I believe there's going to be another huge turnover for that match. I think it's going to be the right decision. And then against Bologna, it's another must-win match. Even though, as you were saying, Bologna's playing well. There are a lot of things around Mihajlovic. Players are giving some extra motivation for this match. So Lazio has to be really, really focused and, think that it's not a win that changed everything. It's a series of match won that put Lazio in a good position.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a bigger match than it might seem, the Rennes game, for those reasons. I think it could do a lot for the momentum. I have actually seen Rennes once this season. I had to cover their game earlier on when they played PSG, and they actually beat them. And they were so impressive in that game. They played with a 5-3-2, so they do, they will sit in and hit you, but they had this amazing, you've probably heard of him by now, Eduardo Camavinga, this 16-year-old midfielder, and my God, that guy does not play like he's 16. I can't say I've seen them much since then, and I know their results have dropped off a bit as well. But they're a decent side, and they showed in that game that they're capable of getting very good results. So at home, especially, we have to make sure that they're not underestimated in any way. I mean, I'm sure they're not, because after losing to Cluj, you're the bottom seed in this group. You can't surely underestimate anyone in this competition. So, yeah, but I think that momentum-wise, it's very important to get a result in that match, and also, like you say, for some of these squad players, rotation players, to really stick their hand up and say that they can make an impact in the bigger Serie A games as well.
Yes, absolutely. And as I said, rotation is needed, and everybody has to prove that Inzaghi is right, that I'm a starter and I need to play more. So if Inzaghi is going to rotate, which I think is going to happen, they have a big chance to prove that Inzaghi should give them more playtime. So it's really important. It's really important to play them. Alistair, I know we won 4-0, but I think there's something wrong with Lucas Leiva. Didn't like him that much against Inter when he came in. Today he didn't give me the same impression. It was the same Lucas Leiva we saw last year. Am I too critical, or you had the same impression?
I think it's a fair enough point to raise. I mean, I think not necessarily so much today as just in general this season. I think he had a really good, and this is going to sound quite strange, but in that first half against Spal, he was our best player, I would say. He had a good game there, and that was completely overlooked, obviously, because it was a horrific result. But yeah, I think that he's not quite started yet. I do get the impression that he's yet to kind of put in the assertive performance that we want to see from him. That said, I mean, he did have his moments today. There was, I remember, at one point, one really well-timed tackle early in the first half, which set the whole team off on a counter-attack that resulted in a really good chance. And I think there's such a dependence on him in that system that when he's not at his best, it's kind of more noticeable than it is with a lot of other players, because so much is expected of him to be the guy to anchor that midfield, to intercept, to break up play and stop the opposition raiding into our half. And it's a position of immense responsibility. So I still think he's the best guy for that job. But yeah, I think that perhaps we want to see a bit better.
Let's not forget that he missed part of the retiro for an injury, so maybe he's not still 100% fit because of that problem he had. So this could be part of the reason why he's not performing at that level. Even though, I have to be honest, I thought Parolo played well in that position, which was surprising, because we know Parolo, he can play in a lot of different positions, to be honest with you, but we didn't expect to see him playing that well there. But again, we thought Cataldi would have been the Vice Leiva, but instead it's Parolo that's playing a lot in that position. But again, Parolo is one of the players, Alistair, that I feel a little bit sorry to don't see him starting regularly, because he's one of the few that he's going to give everything he has. He has experience. He's very helpful. He can do a lot of things. So, not seeing him start, it's a little bit a shame, I think.
Well, Inzaghi absolutely loves the guy. I mean, he's. I don't think you're going to get any lack of opportunities to see him start this season. I think it's fair enough. At this stage of his career, he's 35 now, and I think that for a central midfield player, it's probably the best you can expect, is to be a kind of rotation player at this stage. I mean, he's he's not really lost any of that running power. He still covers a hell of a lot of ground and does the same job he's always done. But he doesn't have that quality that Milinkovic Savic or Alberto possess, and that means he's not going to get in this team unless he's playing in the Lucas role, which he obviously which he understands in a different way, and which he plays in a different way to Lucas. So, no, I mean, I think it's great to have experience like that, but look, I mean, this has been an issue for a lot of players. You mentioned Cataldi, Valon Berisha, Alessandro Morgia before he left to Spal. That midfield is very hard to break into for a lot of players because that first choice three of Lucas, Milinkovic, and Alberto is so good at their best anyway, that it's going to be hard to knock any of them out of the team. But we've got enough games this season that I suppose that the second choice and options there of Parolo, Cataldi, and Berisha, that should still be a very good midfield. Quite an exciting midfield to watch, but I don't know how willing Inzaghi will be to do the kind of full-scale rotation and play all three of them together at the same time. I think it'd be quite interesting, to be honest.
Yeah, we're gonna see. Alistair, we have to talk about what happened after Immobile scored. He celebrated as normal and then went to Simone Inzaghi. After all, it happens against Parma. Inzaghi said it wasn't necessary. We already discussed. There's nothing wrong. Immobile apologized for his behavior. He's still, one of the leaders of the team. We have absolutely no problem. But I think it was really important for everybody to see them two celebrating like that together.
Yeah, it's always nice. I mean, it was good as well because you saw him. He started heading off to the Curva Nord, and then something twigged in his head, and he thought, actually, no, I'm not going to do that. And yeah, headed off to the bench. But I mean, yeah, I think it was, to be honest, I'm amazed it's kind of dragged on as long as this, because it was quite clear already after the game last weekend that nothing had really happened. And I think it dragged on a bit longer than it should have because of that decision to bench Immobile for the Inter game, which was kind of misinterpreted as being a punishment when the punishment had already happened. He'd already been fined by the club. He'd been made to apologise to his teammates, to the squad, and well, not made to, but he'd offered to apologise. And then because of that, it kind of dragged on a bit longer because of the team he picked against Inter. But the team he picked against Inter was a tactical decision. It was a tactical decision he got absolutely right. So, yeah, hopefully now that there's been another public display of it, everything being okay, people will start to believe it.
Yeah, there have been also rumors that Immobile, after being benched against Inter, asked to be sold. So, there are a lot of terrible rumors going on with Lazio. So I think overall it was good. As you said, it wasn't necessary, but it was good to see Lazio, Immobile, and Simone Inzaghi celebrate that well together. A very important goal. Alistair, I think we can wrap it up here. Or you have a stat?
I don't think so. I did see one earlier. Just need to get it up again. It was the first time since April 2018 against Sampdoria, apparently, that Lazio won a match by a 4-goal margin. So there you go. It might seem like another big win, but we've not actually won by that margin for quite a long time. Year and a half.
That was surprising, yeah.
Yeah, you weren't expecting a good stat, were you?
And the thing is, I'm going to give you another surprising stat. That's I know it was 6 days ago, so I don't know if it's still worth it, because we got allowed one goal with Inter. But before that, Lazio had the best defense in Serie A after Inter. So that's surprising.
Also, the team with the most shots on goal in Serie A this season, 45 shots on goal.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's surprising. Eh? That tells you that Lazio's playing well, but has to take more chances. Has to transfer more time the chances they have, because otherwise it would be hard to qualify for the Champions League this year if we don't take that many chances. Guys, thank you as usual for listening to our podcast. Please rate and review the podcast on iTunes if you like it. You remember you can find us on Spotify, on Spreaker, on YouTube, and if you want to support our channel, on patreon.com/Lazio Lounge. Membership starts from $2, so it's less than a cappuccino a month, and you can help us improve our podcast. So if you really like our podcast, help us, and please rate and review our podcast. And we love to have your feedback. So if you want to get in touch, you can follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you again, Alistair. Have a nice week. We're gonna talk about together after Lazio Ren.
Cheers.
Bye.